Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining me for this preview of episode 7 of Anomalous America, Colorado. Yeah, we're just going to hop right into this one, kind of give you an idea of what we're going to be talking about. It's going to be, eerily similar, with the four corners all present an idea similar to one another. And it's kind of fun. So as we finish with Arizona and Utah and hop into Colorado, it'd only be fair to finish the four corners off so you can imagine what that means next. But yeah, so let's jump right in here. This is an article from, let me double check, Utah, 1900. Race of people before the cliff dwellers. Important scientific discoveries made in southwestern Colorado, where mounds indicate that millions of people once lived. Thomas H. Wigglesworth, the veteran civil engineer who has assisted in the construction of a score of railways in the West, is in the city from his ranch in southwestern Colorado, says the Denver News. Rumors of railway construction brought the veteran from his seclusion, but while he has been absent from his former haunts, he has not been entirely idle. He has built several irrigation canals for the government. Apologies there. As I change images, it jumps out, which is frustrating. In the newly opened Indian reservation. In the course of his work, the interests of the civil engineer was aroused by the numerous ruins of a former race of men in the valleys, and he made observations which are both novel and interesting. Mr. Wigglesworth is of the opinion, after studying the conditions for many months, that the cliff dwellers were not the only race inhabiting Montezuma and the other counties of southwestern Colorado previous to the advent of the Indian. He has discovered what to him is indisputable evidence of an older human life. It is his opinion that the forerunners of the cliff dwellers lived in the fertile valleys and inhabited adobe houses instead of houses of stone. Evidences of such structures are distributed through scores of valleys and wide mountain canyons. The mud houses, said Mr. Wigglesworth, at the Albany Hotel yesterday, occupied sites on the level ground and were surrounded by fields of grain. I have dug through mounds 75 feet long and 30 feet wide, which represent the remains of one of the large adobe structures. Now, remember back to not only our Utah episode, but our Arizona episode, where they found countless mounds, mound after mound after mound, to not be just mounds, but buildings that were covered in dirt, sand, and trees. Two-story buildings. In carrying forward the work on the large canal recently ordered by the government for the Utes, we uncovered the foundation of a circular structure which had only one story underground. It is my opinion that the principal houses of these unknown people were 2 stories in height, 1 story above ground and 1 story below, or 1 story buried. The ruins which we excavated are perfectly round, and the foundation is as solid as the day as it was completed. It was apparently built tens of thousands of years ago. Excuse me. I can point out hundreds of mounds of a nature similar, hundreds of mounds of a nature similar to the ones we opened. We uncovered the most beautiful vase of antique workmanship. And again, I apologize. I have to switch back and forth between the articles because share screen is not very smart. Finest workmanship I ever saw. The vase was black with age, And as the workmen of that region, especially the Indians, are superstitious in such matters, they threw the vase over the dump, and I had quite a task of finding it again. The Indians will handle nothing that comes from the ruins, as they believe the relics are hoodooed. They claim that the older ruins are the remains of former Moqui or Zuni life, but it is rare that a white man can induce a Ute Indian to express an opinion on the subject. Mr. Wigglesworth, his other observations too, to the contrary, notwithstanding, declares that no expert will pretend to say there are any evidences of ancient irrigation canals in the valleys of the region. Now we can just look again backwards at Utah and predominantly Arizona. You know, Arizona has more ancient canals than anywhere else in the world. He says he has examined every depression for miles, and the indentations, which have in some instances been pointed out as the bed of an ancient canal, are really the cellars of the old adobe houses. So all these riverbeds, or what look like ancient riverbeds, are just man-made structures. How crazy is that? It just strengthens what we were talking about in our Utah episode, as well as the Arizona episode, but the Utah one especially, when they were talking about the valleys, and the bridge, the natural bridges. They said looked like they were sculpted by man, but were made by nature. And describing traveling the canyons where they saw man-made structures woven throughout the canyons. Now, this man's saying that what looks like a natural formation is really just a man-made structure, a giant man-made structure that goes on for miles. His explanation of agriculture under such circumstances is that weather conditions have changed in modern times in the region, and formerly the district was blessed with abundant rains. Weather has changed for sure. So, we're hopping through different time frames, but the whole world was tropical at one point. Where are we from that time to now? It's hard to say. Many interesting observations have been made by the former Denver man. One of the most remarkable is that, in his opinion, the Indians of the region are descendants of the Asiatic nations. And we're going to cover this more in the episode. He has assisted in scientific measurements of Indians of southwestern Colorado and northern New Mexico, and it is his belief that the Navajos are the direct descendants of the Japanese. He says if an Apache is dressed in the style of the real native of Japan, a keen eye will be obliged to look twice in order to detect the difference in appearance. Mr. Wigglesworth estimates that the number of former inhabitants of the valleys leading to the San Juan River is not to be estimated in thousands, but in millions. The field is of such absorbing interest that last summer the Museum of Natural History of New York sent a scientist of worldwide repute who spent the summer near the Wigglesworth Ranch investigating on the surface indications and measuring Indians so as to compare the measurements with those of modern people of Asia. It is the opinion of Mr. Wigglesworth that discoveries will be announced from the southwestern Colorado at an early day, which will startle the scientific world. Yeah, and we're going to get into that, right? What were we hearing about, especially in Arizona? They were finding pictographs that looked oddly Chinese, and we're going to find a bunch of those in Colorado. They were finding Asiatic features in some of the mummies. And if you remember the monarch of an unknown age, the prehistoric king they uncovered in Arizona, His hair was long and black, and his hair was tied in a queue, a long ponytail, which, if you study that, it goes one direction. So, yeah, thanks for tuning in. See you on Tuesday.